Welcome to Technical Leadership Talks, the podcast that brings you advice, insights, and knowledge from industry leaders and experts on how to navigate managing in the technical field. Technical Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texas A&M University's Master of Engineering Technical Management, an online graduate program that trains industry professionals for leadership positions. I'm Katie, METM's digital marketer and your host for this episode. In today's episode, we are featuring Tobin Williams, the former Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Stellantis. The audio you will hear is from Texas A&M's Master of Engineering Technical Management's Executive Leadership Speaker Series. At this series, Tobin spoke to METM students about his leadership journey and provided insights and advice to help guide students as they navigate their current and future leadership roles.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, obviously. I was sharing with a few folks here earlier that just simply having the opportunity, the invitation in and of itself is quite an honor. And when I actually received the invitation and had a conversation with Ahmed, for those of you who don't know, I enjoy music. I actually started doing the wobble inside of my office. So everybody knows what the wobble is? Okay, it's a line dance. It actually became pretty famous here at A&M. There was a huge flash mob here several years ago when the song became very popular. And my granddaughter says, "Hey, look what's going on." And it was a bunch of young students doing the wobble here at A&M. So I was really delighted. So thank you so much for the leadership team for thinking enough of me to invite me here. So what I'm going to do here briefly is share with you my leadership journey. It has been quite a journey, frankly. I will share with you some key, what I believe are defining moments that as I reflect upon my journey, the things that really, really matter. And it's really, for me, it's the why, right? So I'll just start here at the bottom. What drives me? What is the reason? What pushes me in this whole area of leadership and where I find myself? Number one, it's obviously right in the center. I have faith in God because God has faith in me. And you'll hear a little bit about that today. And secondly, my family. Absolutely 100% without a doubt. Extremely important in terms of every single decision that I have made. Now, they haven't always been happy with my decisions, but I've at least always tried to consider them no matter how extreme the decisions have been. And you'll hear a little bit of that as well. And I've been beyond blessed. I've been beyond fortunate to have a group of amazing people who have spent time with me to kind of help frame what I consider the early seeds of leadership. What isn't pictured here would be, I've talked about my family. I have a wonderful wife of 47 years. Yes, 47. Somebody has actually stayed with me for 47 years. I have two children, Angela and Cameron, and three grandchildren who I simply adore. They are the foundation. They are my passion, the center, and the reason for me doing a lot of things that I do. So let me just start off a little bit here. I graduated from Central Michigan University, which is in relative terms, a very small university in comparison to A&M, about 16,000 students. I graduated with my bachelor's and master's there. And when I graduated with my master's, it was really crazy. The economy had tanked. I graduated with like a 3.8. This was back in the day when you had to, if you were interested in a job, you had to type a letter and then mail it off and then wait for the mail to come back. And, with the rejection. And I was sharing last evening with some folks that I sent off thousands, it seemed like it was thousands of letters. I even sent one to Red Lobster. And Red Lobster sent a note back to me saying, "Sorry, we don't have a job for you. You're not qualified." I'm going like, really? Red Lobster? Right. I mean, a guy with a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, 3.8 GPA, and you mean I can't work at Red Lobster? What's the deal? And so finally, I was fortunate enough to land a role at General Motors. So I was hired into a training program. It's called the CGIT college graduate and training program. And I started that with no real intentions of staying there 35 years. Honestly, my whole idea was paying my student loans. I was all about eating, right? I needed to make sure I had a place to stay. It was all the fundamentals, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I needed something to eat, needed a place to stay, and some place to get from point A to point B. That was my interest. And I was hired into the CGIT program, and I actually became a production supervisor. So imagine this, a guy with a master's degree going into a factory setting, facility that was producing probably 1.2, 1.3 million vehicles a year, about 12,000 people in the facility over 4 shifts. And we were really producing the Cadillac Escalade, the equivalent of the Cadillac Escalade. And so I was supervising people at 23 that were, maybe 50 years old. And so I'm saying, hey, look, man, you got to put this boat on this way because this is what it says. And you can imagine they're looking at me like, seriously? You're half my age. Why are you telling me anything? And the tricks that they played on me, it was just like, it was a nightmare. But anyway, I did that for a while, did literally every single job that you can do as a manufacturing production supervisor. And did it pretty well. I was pretty comfortable that, okay, maybe I can do this for the rest of my career, whatever that might be, as long as I continue to do the basics. Then there was an amazing guy, amazing individual that stepped into my life and simply saw more in me, perhaps my first interaction with a real life mentor that saw more in me than I saw in myself. And he literally pushed me. He told me, hey, look, man, production, you're doing it well. You're doing a great job here, but this isn't where you belong. You belong in what was then personnel. And I'm going like, yeah, I know, but okay. So he pushed me into personnel. I did a number of jobs at the local plant. I did the safety job. I didn't know anything about safety, nothing. But they put me in a safety job. So I did a safety job. I did a labor relations job. I did assistant personnel director job. And I must have done them reasonably well because then I ended up getting promoted to go down to central office. So I moved south of Saginaw, Michigan. I moved south of Saginaw in Flint, Michigan, and I went to Detroit. Worked at the central office, the headquarters at the time. So I became the manager for employee benefits, my first true intimate role where I began to learn employee benefits. So I did the employee benefits job. Then they moved me back to Pontiac. At the time, we were the most profitable region or profitable division inside of General Motors because we were producing Cadillacs at the time. So I did all the trucks and all of that. So I became the corporate staff director for corporate staff for the truck group. And then we get the bright idea, and I did a reasonable good job there. The company decided that they wanted to centralize all of our staffing. Prior to that, each and every facility inside of General Motors essentially did its own staffing. So if you were in Flint, Michigan, and you had 8 different plants there, you as an individual, Christian, you could actually go to 8 different plants, 8 different interviews, 8 different times, and get 8 different offers. And you can just fundamentally think about how expensive that was for the company. And somebody inside of the company, hey, we got a bright idea. Let's centralize some of this and reduce our cost. And so I was one of the people that they selected. Okay, Tobin, here, you and 4 other people, come and do this, right? And so we centralized staffing, and, it was a challenge because nobody wanted to give up the control that they had. I want to be able to offer the people that I'm interested in, right, the money that I want to offer them. I don't want to spend time trying to compete with everybody else. But they didn't understand or appreciate the value of creating value across the organization. Everybody was functionally focused or unit focused in their specific area. I did that for a period of time. Then I got a call saying, hey, look, we're trying to globalize our footprint in manufacturing. Would you be interested in being a part of that process? And I had no idea what they were talking about, footprint. Like, footprint what? What? Footprint what? footprint are you talking about? And so I said, sure, let's do it. And I became a part of the organization in manufacturing where we started to rationalize our footprint, looking specifically at where we had strategic locations in manufacturing, if they were profitable and what we needed to do. And so I did that for a period of time. And this was during the time that we were trying to further globalize our company, right? Because North America had started losing money, and we saw great value in expanding and putting the foot on the pedal in foreign markets, particularly Asia Pacific. Then I get a call out of nowhere saying, hey, Tobin, we have this incredible opportunity for you to go to Thailand. Would you be interested in being considered for the Vice President of Human Resources for ASEAN and Thailand? ASEAN, the Association of South Asian Nations. And to be honest with you, I didn't have any idea where Thailand was. I didn't know the difference between Thailand and Taiwan, right? And so I had to make a decision. And so this is where it was a real defining moment for me, right? I consulted with my wife and consulted with my family. I prayed about it and made the decision to go to Thailand. And my wife was working. She was working, in IT, right, at Ford Motor Company, making a reasonable salary. And for those of you in Detroit, I thought I had arrived when I had become a global leader before I went to Thailand. I had a fairly nice house, a fairly nice car, a couple of nice suits. And those of you that know Detroit, you like shoes. And so I had a couple of real nice pair of shoes and about $300 in the bank. And I thought life was good, right? Then my world disrupts itself. And then they asked me to go to Thailand. So then I prayed about it and asked my family what they thought. Packed our bags and moved to Bangkok, Thailand. Not Taiwan, Thailand. And I found the right sign in the airport to figure out where I was going. So I get in the plane, go to Thailand, and I go to Thailand essentially alone because my wife was still working. She hadn't transitioned out. And my son and daughter were still in school. And so I'm in Thailand for the first 5 months alone. And so this is a fairly significant defining moment for me from a leadership perspective. I am there alone, and for someone who has never been apart from their family in a foreign country, and this is when, if you made an international call, it was about $15 a minute, right? And so my wife was leaving her job. I didn't have the extra cash to keep making phone calls. And so I was disconnected from my family. And so I remember vividly having been there for 3 or 4 months already, that the beauty of the country had started to fade, right? The exotic appeal, the smells and everything had started to lose their beauty. And I was there all alone, so much so that my skin started to crawl because I was uncomfortable with where I was. I had not been there before. This was a space that was totally open to me, but I had never been in it before. And there I was one day sitting in my office feeling terrible about myself, like, why am I even here, right? And so I'm there in my office, and my boss from Asia Pacific was in Singapore, came to Bangkok, calls me up, says, hey, I need to see you urgently. Get in the car, come and see me. Now, granted, I had no idea where Bangkok was. I didn't know whether it was north, south, east, or west. He just told me to get there and to get the driver to take me. So I get in the car. Before I get in the car, I said, well, let me go to the restroom. So I go in to the men's room, and I'm there at the urinal. And all of a sudden, a lady comes in and starts cleaning the urinal next to me. And I'm sitting there like, what? I can't even go to the restroom in peace, right? And so I finally gather myself together, and I get my stuff, and I get in the back of the car, and I'm in the back of the car, and I am literally fuming. I'm telling you the truth. I am literally as I'm talking to you, that's exactly how I was talking to God. I'm going like, look, man, look, you said it was okay. Now, why am I feeling this way? And I was just so, we had several conversations on the way. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, a peace came over me that said, just like you trust the driver to take you where you got to go, you got to trust me the same way, right? My first leadership, significant life-defining moment at that age, understanding that I needed spiritual guidance to guide me through. And it became my principle as I moved through. So I did Thailand for 4 years. And a couple of key points that I will share with you, I never will forget. Thailand at the time had not really turned the technology curve, right? And so we would always have to get on the plane to run to Singapore to get all the newest technology. So I had gone home for home leave, and I used to literally fiend off of technology. So as soon as we get off the airplane, change clothes, shower and everything, you go to Best Buy and you're walking in Best Buy. Oh man, look at that. Oh, that's awesome. That's great, right? And so I saw these things. I see this fantastic refrigerator, had an LED screen on the inside of it. I run back to the condo. I tell my wife, I said, as soon as we coming back here, I'm getting me a refrigerator with an LED screen in it. It was just crazy, right? And so I get back to Thailand, and I'm in my office, and you come back from home leave, you're kind of giddy and everything. And my second in command, Kun Sumnuk, he comes in and he says, "Oh, Kun Tobin, how was your trip? How was your home leave and everything?" And I started telling him, I said, "Oh man, look, Kun Sumnuk, I went to Best Buy and I saw this refrigerator that has this LED screen in it. It's just awesome." And I'm just going on. And he stops and he looks at me, he says, "Kun Tobin, why would you need an LED screen in your refrigerator?" And I thought about it, and it was like a bolt of lightning hit me. I thought about it. I said, look, I don't. Changed my life because it made life so simple. There are things that we think we need. They're not necessities. Those are wants. And it refined my list of things in terms of how I define the quality of life in all of that. It was just an amazing experience. And when I tell that story, I still get shook sometimes because it was a revelation. I really thought I needed a refrigerator with an LED screen. But the other side of that is it just goes to show how companies can program your mind to make you think you want something and you really don't need it. You just want it, right? So that was my time in Thailand. And I actually, when I think about that particular role, prior to that, I was all about HR. That was my functional domain. I knew HR end to end. I had become an expert on that. I had never worked in a business role. So this was my opportunity to kind of make the step function change from a functional leader to a business leader. Because now I became a key strategic business partner making decisions relative to the product portfolio. Making decisions, how do we engage in our investments inside of the company? How do we deal with unions? How do we communicate with the Thai press? Or how do we talk to potential partners in Malaysia or Singapore? All of that was work that I had never encountered or faced before this role. Then after about 4 years or so, my boss calls me up. She says, "Hey, Tobe," she abbreviated my name. She says, "Hey, Tobe, I need you to go to India. And I only need you there for 2 weeks. I need you to go to fire the current VP of HR. And stay there for 2 weeks, and it's all good." And she had been so incredibly kind to me. I was absolutely blindly loyal to her. And I had been told all this time, you don't want to go to India because of this, that, and the third. And I had all these fiefdoms in my head about going to India. But I literally pushed those aside and decided to go. I said, absolutely, I'll go. And thinking, so I grabbed my overnight bag, my toothbrush, and a couple other things, and I head to India. And so I was stationed, or I was located in Baroda, India, which is in Gujarat. It's the birthplace of Mahatma Gandhi. So it's a veg state, so no meat, and literally no alcohol. And so I almost overnight had to try to figure all of that out, right? I didn't have any cultural sensitivity training. I didn't have all the nice to-dos. It was just like get on the plane, jump off, and go to the hotel. And the hotel, it was a village. Get this, a village, right? To get to the front of the hotel, I had to go past cows, I had to go past camels, I had to go past sheep, I had to do all of that. And in many instances, when I went to go look for a haircut, I'm looking for a barber, right? Very simple thing. And for an African American man, sometimes the barbershop is a therapy kind of situation. You go in, you sit down, you relax, you're very transparent, you talk about stuff you don't typically talk about anywhere else, and it's kind of like, okay, I feel good about myself, I'm ready to go. I had walked into this one barbershop, and it was like, I had never seen a black man before. It was truly a village. And so I went into India, planning to stay only 2 weeks, and ended up staying almost 2 years. I had existed for the first 6 weeks on a bag of locally produced potato chips, Bango potato chips, a Hershey's chocolate bar, and a Coca-Cola. I literally lost 25 pounds in 6 weeks. I realized after 6 weeks, nobody was coming. Nobody was coming, right? And so I had to make a decision that I had to knuckle in. And I did. And I ended up literally became consumed with the work there. The folks there were so incredibly kind. Again, we had offices in Delhi, we had offices in Bangalore, we had offices in Hyderabad, Rajasthan, we had offices in Mumbai. And so I was responsible for all of that. So I had to learn all of that, and I had to learn it all fairly quickly. And while being there, I literally fell in love with the culture. The things that everybody told me that I wouldn't like, I fell in love with. You don't want to eat the food. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. Fell in love with it. When I tell you I fell in love with it, I fell in love with it, right? And so I went... the last day that I was there, just prior to that, I get another call from my boss, and she says, "Hey, Tobe," and I'm starting to pick up a trend here. We talked about trends earlier. When they start to abbreviate your name, there's usually a caveat on the other end, right? And so she says, "Hey, Tobe, would you be interested in coming to China? We're trying to put our foot on the gas. The chairman wants to put a lot of pressure in China because we see huge opportunity for profitability. We need you to come there, help us with a few issues. Would you be willing to do it? Oh, and by the way, you only have to do it for a year because we know we'll have somebody ready right behind you." And I'm thinking like, last time you said it was a couple of weeks and it turned out to be almost 2 years. What is this going to be? But then without hesitation, because again, she had been extraordinarily kind to me and I was blindly loyal, I packed my bags and go to Shanghai. So in Shanghai, I was responsible for all of our countries in Asia Pacific. I had end-to-end HR responsibility. Did not see the future because shortly after I was there a year, the company goes bankrupt. And it was my responsibility to lead Asia Pacific through the bankruptcy, right? So key lesson for me there, because, sometimes you don't always see the future. The puzzle doesn't always come together neatly as you originally planned, and you just simply have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with the cards that I've been dealt? And I had to do that. So while I was there in Asia Pacific, in that particular role. I had to work with governments, I had to work with suppliers, I had to work with HR leaders in each one of the countries, and also had to work with government officials to try to figure out how do we continue to operate in these countries, because many of these countries were extremely profitable. And then we had to reformat what the region was going to look like. So it went from 16 countries in Asia Pacific alone to well over 34 countries, where we restructured the entire organization from Asia Pacific to international operations. So international operations comprehended both South America, Russia, Europe, and everything inside of Africa, and everything in Asia Pacific. So quite a task. So I'd been gone by this time almost 10 years, and they call me up, say, yeah, you guessed it right. They say, hey, Tobe, we got a great opportunity for you right back here in the U.S. Would you be interested in coming back? And so I did. I went back to the U.S. as a director of organizational capability. So what is that? I said, wow, that's a fancy name. What is that? It's a COE, a Center of Expertise, that was really responsible for organizational development, talent management, progression and succession, change management, learning and development, talent acquisition, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I had all that for a period of time. Then an opportunity came up for global staffs, where I became the executive director of all the corporate global staffs globally. And then after a period of time, I get another call from another leader, because the other leader had gone on. And this boss calls me up, and he always called me Tobe, but he says, hey, Tobe, look, we got an amazing opportunity for you in South America. Would you be interested in going down there? We're having major issues. We're bleeding money. Would be really interested and grateful if you would consider. And me being the person that I am in my DNA, I absolutely said, yes, let's do it. So I went down to South America and restructured literally the region, helped restructure the region. There are many sub-regions inside it, so we consolidated all of that, did some adjustments in terms of our white-collar workforce, so forth and so on. And then it was at this particular time, towards the end of my time at General Motors, I get a call from my wife at the end of, towards the end of my assignment there, and I was in Ecuador at the time. She called and says, hey, I need you to come home quickly. I said, what's going on? She says, our son is in ICU, right? And so I get on a plane and get to back to Detroit. I get to the hospital, and for sure, he's in ICU. He's got all these machines hooked up to him. And they said, his heart is going crazy. His kidneys are shutting down. And we just letting you know. And I made the decision that I would go on a massive hunt for a kidney for my son. So I went through a number of, did all the research as most of you would do. And I found a hospital that was willing to take me as a donor for a kidney for my son. And so went through that process, donated a kidney to him in 2018. And, that took some time, left General Motors. And then subsequently, I ended up being hired to ProMedica Healthcare Organization, which is a mid-sized healthcare company, right? Mid-sized healthcare company organization of about 50,000 employees total. And it's one of the largest mid-sized healthcare organizations in the country. At the time, we were responsible for acute care, ambulatory physician group, hospital, and I guess what you would call it residency, rehab kind of facilities. And so in doing that, I said, yeah, let's do it. I really had not had a lot of exposure to healthcare other than what you would normally have as a senior leader. I was not intimately into the details as it relates to Obamacare, what's good, what's bad, and all of that. So it was an opportunity for me to take on a new challenge. So I jumped at it. And, 2 weeks into it, the pandemic strikes. And I'm going like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Is this like, why is all this following me? Or maybe it's going before me or whatever. And so they tapped me to be the one of the leads for the emergency response for the pandemic. And, this is when nobody understood the modality of the pandemic. Nobody really understood everything about it. So, we had doctors that were outside at the hospital and all this protective equipment. And you had people coming through drive-throughs, and you're taking samples and you're sending the samples down here to Texas, and you wouldn't get the results back for a week. And you had people in long-term care facilities that obviously were hooked up to devices, and families couldn't see them, and they were communicating by iPads, right? It was all of that. And I never will forget, I was in a room with about 5 or 6 doctors, and I questioned them. I said, is this a good idea that all of us are in this same room having a conversation? Can we do this virtually? And everybody, we didn't know. Yeah, well, it's fine. And 2 weeks later, every single one of us ended up getting terribly, terribly ill. One guy ended up on a respirator for about 4 weeks as a result. And when I got ready to leave ProMedica, he calls me. He says, I never will forget you challenging us being about having a physical presence inside of one of the conference rooms talking about the pandemic. I said, yeah. I said, for me, it seemed to be pretty simple, pretty basic. But you guys were the doctors, so I just kind of yielded to your prior expertise. But it didn't seem to me to be really the smartest thing ever. But okay, I'll go with it. So I did ProMedica for 2 years, and I kept getting phone calls from headhunters saying, "Hey, look, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" I said, no. Then finally, I get a phone call from this one headhunter that says, "Hey, we have a great opportunity for you." She started selling it. Would you be interested in going back to manufacturing? I said, I never really thought about that. She said, well, we have an opportunity with Stellantis, and I'll share with you a little bit about Stellantis. And so I started thinking about it, and you know how it is with your first love, right? You just never really, you may move on, but you never really forget about the first love. And so for me, automotive or manufacturing represented the first love. And so I thought about it and really didn't spend a lot of time. I just jumped on it. I said, yes, so let me go to Stellantis. So I joined Stellantis in 2022. Stellantis is a company that bought the former Chrysler Fiat. It's 14 iconic brands all over the world, primarily the big money makers here in the U.S., Dodge, Jeep, all of those American brands, and some of them are global, did that. And I had responsibility for all of North America end-to-end HR, right? And so it was simply about 56,000 people. So a fairly sizable organization for which I had responsibility for. I had roughly 450 HR people throughout the organization in Canada, the U.S., and in Mexico. So quite a challenge trying to build culture in an organization that has been recently acquired by a non-U.S. based company. And so it was a formidable challenge, but one that I actually took with a great deal of pride and energy. I concluded my time with Stellantis at the end of the year, 3 years. It was a challenging 3 years because how many of you followed the UAW negotiations okay, so some of you follow that. So the Stellantis, one of the partners that we have there is a union, UAW, and the UAW took a 6-week strike at Stellantis and literally brought the company down at not only Stellantis, but also brought General Motors and Ford down 6 weeks. And if you can imagine taking a major company like General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis down for that amount, huge amounts of monies lost by all of those companies. And it was a clear example for me when I reflect upon, what was the key learning? What would you take out of that whole arduous experience? It's this: you build relationships before you need them. In a crisis, it is tremendously difficult to build a relationship that requires sacrifice, that requires understanding, that requires alignment when you have not built a relationship. That's the takeaway. After 40 years, 5 countries lived in, 37 countries plus visited, that was a very telling experience for me. Because we thought at Stellantis that we could just sit down and have a reasonable conversation with partners, thinking that we all were completely aligned. That was not the case. We learned a very expensive lesson that you build relationships before you need them. So let me just summarize here with a few closing points, and I'll be happy to take any questions. So my leadership journey has kind of been built around, I talked a little bit about the spiritual aspect of it, what it meant. I talk a little bit about the personal aspect of it in terms of the sacrifices that have been made throughout all of this. But one of the things that I often say and that I often share with my team is that it's not a race to the middle, it's a race to the top. One of the things that happened to me, I came back from Asia post-bankruptcy, and I'm walking in the GM headquarters at the time, and I'm walking with a very senior leader, and the person asked me, said, "Hey, what do you see? You've worked all over the world. What do you see?" And I'm thinking, I see everybody with a water bottle and a smile. What I didn't see was the urgency to compete. It wasn't enough. It isn't enough, regardless of the industry you find yourself in. It is not enough to be competitive. You want, as a leader, you want to disrupt. You want to create chaos. You want to drive everyone to that objective, to be number one. You do not want to be number 2. You don't want to be number 3. You don't want to be in the middle. It's not a race to the middle. It's not enough to be competitive. You absolutely want to win. The other point that I would share, and I shared this earlier when I talked about Thailand and some of the sacrifices that I had to make. Opportunity is rarely convenient, and it will almost always require a sacrifice. What do I mean by that? Many times we expect as leaders or growing leaders the puzzle to come together neatly and that everything fits well. It rarely happens like that. You have to understand that if you miss an opportunity, the opportunity is going to find somebody else. It will absolutely find somebody else. You have to be prepared to make the trade-off decision. I made the decision to take a $50,000, $60,000 a year cut to go to Thailand because my wife was coming with me. We lost that income. I got it back many, many, many times over. But the puzzle, I didn't see that. The puzzle didn't always come together neatly. I had to make a sacrifice. And so what I'm sharing with you, that opportunities are rarely convenient. Then they will always require a sacrifice. And if they don't, get this, if they don't, you ought to be asking the second and third and fourth question, because that puzzle just doesn't always come together like that, is my experience. The second thing, and it's one of the things that I share with my team when I really think about it, the 40 plus years, right, in industry, across multiple sectors and across the world, the people that I've been fortunate enough to work with, to hire, I look back and I see them growing significantly, Many of them, as HR leaders, are leading major companies throughout the world. And one of the things that I share with them consistently is that there are some decisions that are big and there are others that are small. The small ones you can get wrong and recover from. The big ones, you got to get those right because it'll take you a lifetime to correct those. Our charge is to know the difference between the big ones and the small ones and get the big ones right. Engage with people who are not like you. One of the key for me in terms of success factors in leading people and in leadership is the ability to take on change, to take on the challenge, and to be able to learn to collaborate and work with people who are not like me. I'd never worked intimately with Thais before, never worked intimately with Singaporeans before, Indonesians before, knew nothing about Malaysians, Chinese, never really worked intimately with those groups of people. But how powerful is it to be able to learn a different way of doing things, a different way of thinking about things and reaching a better conclusion by virtue of having various voices around the table. And the other two things that I will say, three things that I'll say, is to keep your skill set current. Your skill set is your commodity, and you being here today is obviously an example of that. But so often leaders will rest on their accomplishments and not seek to grow. It's very easy to become comfortable. But one of the things you are obviously are aware of, that if you become comfortable and you don't continue to drive and push your skill set, you lose the ability to leverage your commodity. You lose your ability to create value for the company. And as a result, you lose your ability to eat. It's that simple. Critically important that you keep your skill set current. It's a podcast. It's audiobooks. It's a book. It's engaging in classes like this. Whatever it is for you, define the it and keep at it, because you have to be relevant, and your relevancy creates your value for the company. And finally, it's a personal tag for me. Time gives witness to the truth. Truth fights its own battle. You stand with the truth, stand behind it. You don't have to fight for it. And so just a tag to simply say, your integrity is everything. It is fundamental. Keep your integrity in front of you. It will create value for you in the years to come. And I'll just leave you with this. 2025 presents itself as an opportunity for you. An amazing, incredible value for you, 2025. My admonition to you is make 2025 yours and eat it up.
Thank you for listening in to today's episode. Tech Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texas A&M University's Master of Engineering Technical Management. To learn more, visit metm.tamu.edu.